Two popular ways to watch horror films are laughing at jump scares and covered in popcorn, or the way of the hardcore terror-addicted few on your own. Watching horror alone can be a challenge. By the time the credits roll, you're convinced there must be a ghost standing in the shadowy corner of your kitchen or a knife-wielding maniac under the bed. But those who love being scared sometimes prefer to brave it solo. So turn off the lights, put your phone far away and grab your comfort blanket, as I'm Adam from What Culture, and here are 10 most fear-inducing horror movies to watch alone. Number 10. The Shining. Kubrick's horror masterpiece The Shining has the power to scare even if viewed with 20 friends, all dancing the conga in the background. Now try it alone at 1 in the morning with no one to hold your hand. Cut off from the world, imprisoned by the menacing Overlook Hotel, and driven to murderous insanity by inescapable demons both inside and out, Jack Nicholson gives the performance of a lifetime. We have to endure the unfolding terror through the wide-eyed mania of Shelley Duvall's Wendy, whose performance was, according to on-set reports, only partly acted due to Kubrick's insistence on madness-inducing multiple takes. A claustrophobic, intense experience perfectly elevated by the haunting musical score of Wendy Carlos and Rachel Elkind. Give it a try. Turn off the lights, put your phone away, and follow young Danny around the silent labyrinth-themed corridors. Number 9. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre is not for the easily shocked. Marking the beginning of a period of American filmmaking that attempted to expose the failure of the American dream, the defeat in Vietnam, and the scandals of Nixon, this is hard viewing. With a setup that has become so familiar to modern audiences, a group of unsuspecting teens on a road trip encounter more than they expected on a farm in the Deep South. Leatherface and family don't take kindly to strangers, so let the dismemberment begin. Visual bloody horror aside, a lot of this film's success comes from the use of sound to induce fear. The last half an hour is often nothing but the unfiltered, relentless screaming of Sally as she runs for her life, and the unstoppable mechanical roar of the chainsaw. So much so that long after the film has ended, it's all you can hear, screaming and shredding. It's a shame that the genre has become so poorly imitated over the years. Yet the original will always retain its power to shock, especially if watched under the same conditions as the last remaining survivor, alone and helpless. Number 8. Pulse. The second Japanese horror to make the cut, Pulse is a strange, unsettling experience and possibly the weirdest entry on this list. Directed by Kiyoshi Kurosawa, Pulse takes our addiction to technology and the nature of an internet-spread virus and cleverly presents it with sci-fi-esque speculative terror. When Taguchi mysteriously commits suicide, his friends begin to realize that there is literally a ghost in the machine. With shadows and slow-motion techniques put to unsettling effect, Pulse is a unique and disturbing film that manages to combine our fears of disease and technology going haywire with the dread of the supernatural. After nearly 2 decades, Pulse still feels eerily relevant. One standout sequence has a character trying to save himself by hiding behind the sofa, safest place in the world besides under the duvet, as a malevolent spirit advances from the shadows. Filmed in painfully slow motion from the point of view of the victim, we live the moment through his eyes as he desperately grabs for the furniture to defend himself. There can be no doubt that Pulse will have exactly the same result. The film lingers in the mind long after viewing, like the mechanism of the deadly virus itself, making Pulse a sci-fi horror gem. Number 7. The Changeling. Riding the coattails of The Exorcist and The Omen, The Changeling has earned something resembling cult status over the years. Starring acting legends George C. Scott and Melvyn Douglas, this is a masterclass in the slow burn technique of movie making and relies purely on Hitchcockian suspense and drip-fed mystery to pull us into the plot. Scott plays John Russell, a grieving father and widower who, you guessed it, moves into a huge spooky mansion for some time to grieve, compose and recover his life. Several loud bangs, a ghostly bathtub apparition, and one seance later, Russell realizes he must lay the spirit to rest in order to resolve his own grief. Using a purpose-built and superbly atmospheric set for the interiors of the haunted house, this is classic ghost story territory, given a touch of thespian class from Scott. Based on the supposed supernatural experiences of screenwriter Russell Hunter with the superb wide-angle camera work from Sam Peckinpah's regular cinematographer John Cuquelin, The Changeling is a must-see for horror fans that prefer a subtler, more psychological approach to their horror films. Ghost stories are far more effective when watched in the right circumstances, alone at night, just like Russell himself. A brilliant sequence, copied many times after subsequent films, uses a child's toy to chilling effect. I can guarantee you'll never look at a red rubber ball the same way again. Number 6. The Woman in Black. Not to be confused with the Daniel Radcliffe version, a quality horror film in its own right, this superb made-for-TV movie directed by Herbert Wise came to the small screen soon after the success of the novel and stage play of the same name. Arthur Kipps reluctantly accepts the task of settling the affairs of the late widow Alice Drablow in the remote isolated Eel Marsh house, only to discover that, unlike you, he is not alone. The village of Crython Gifford and its inhabitants must live with her spectre, and those who lay eyes upon her must all pay a terrible price. The Woman in Black herself, played with a terrifying intensity by Pauline Moran, steals the show and is so effective in her presentation that CGI swollen modern ghost features could learn a lot from this simple approach. Using lo-fi camera techniques and a classic English ghost story sensibility, this original version has a sequence in the final act of the movie that is so terrifying that, if watched alone, will have you staring at your bedroom window in utter terror, waiting for a visitor all dressed in black. Number 5. Rosemary's Baby. An essential entry for horror fans and a film so desperately bleak that to really appreciate the despair of and sympathy for Rosemary's inescapable situation, it must be braved, like her, all by yourself. Rosemary Woodhouse realizes only too late that she is the victim of satanic forces attempting to steal her unborn child. This is a conspiracy and they're all in on it. Her most trusted companions, her husband, her doctor, even the kindly, albeit totally eccentric elderly couple in her apartment block, are manipulating and exploiting her in an attempt to conjure the son of Satan himself. The film begins with an innocent, playful lullaby reflecting the hopes and dreams of an expectant mother. Mia Farrow is superb in this role. Naive, trusting, desperate, and terrified. Her panic-stricken eyes convey her terror without uttering a single word, and we can do nothing to help but scream pointlessly at the television screen. By the end of the first act, she has succumbed to paranoia, persecution, and disbelief. What have you done to his eyes, you maniacs? Only your imagination will conjure up that particular vision of hell, so don't distract it, watch it alone. Number 4. Hereditary. Devil worship, possession, and Faustian pacts have kept viewers biting their collective nails for decades, and then along came Hereditary. Featuring one of the most shocking second act plot twists ever committed to film, Ari Aster's big screen debut was an audacious one. Recovering from the death of her mother, Toni Collette's Annie slowly comes to the realization that, surprise, her family harbors dark and terrifying secrets. As the extent of the conspiracy is slowly revealed, we watch her endure loss, grief, and terrifying obsession as her son falls foul to a sinister cult of devil worshippers. This is art house horror at its finest, with meticulously shot, carefully lit scenes well paced throughout. Along with a top-tier cast such as Gabriel Byrne adding a level of sophistication to the production, this is so much more than another Dennis Wheatley-esque occult thriller. A24 continues to produce above-average horror films, such as The Lighthouse and Aster's own follow-up Midsummer. Long may they continue. With an unnerving performance from newcomer Millie Shapiro, Hereditary deserves full solo immersion. Lights out, volume up, nerves shredded. If you can make it through to Annie attempting to get into the attic using her head as a battering ram before taking a breather, you're braver than most. Number 3. The Blair Witch Project. Love it or hate it, The Blair Witch Project has earned its place among every list of the most influential horror movies ever made. Not only is it still the most profitable horror movie ever, its success has achieved elevated found footage horror to a commercially viable subgenre status of its own. As the three protagonists make their way into the Black Hills near Purkittsville, Maryland, to document the legend of the Blair Witch, little do they know of the horror they are soon to be subjected to. Lost, alone, hungry, and fearing for their lives, they are either falling prey to demented locals, terrorizing them in the night, or the witch herself. We watch the sanity of 3 young filmmakers slowly dripping away, much like mucus from Heather's nose, as they lose themselves deeper into the woods. The sound of crying babies and crashing branches in the night, the loss of the map that will lead Heather, Mike, and Josh to safety, and the backstory of the kidnapped children made to stand in the corner of a killer's lair, all lead to a grisly payoff in the chilling final shot of the film. Watch this in a packed cinema surrounded by popcorn-munching, phone-checking, easily distracted audience, and the film loses all its power. Number 2. Suspiria. Dario Argento's seminal 70s occult horror is an assault on the senses that never lets you come up for air. With the film's bold use of primary color palettes, visceral death sequences, and haunting prog rock soundtrack, this is a bizarre acid trip of a film that has to be viewed alone to really absorb its full effect. The plot focuses on young Susie Banyan attempting a prestigious ballet school in Germany, only to discover that it is in fact run by a coven of witches. What's curious about this film is that it doesn't have much in the way of plot, and the special effects are dated, to say the least, yet it has a bewitching power all of its own. This is Argento at his height, daring and layered with hidden occult legend inspired by the writing of Thomas de Quincey. The opening 10-minute sequence of Susie's journey to the school at night in the pouring rain, with the word witch whispered and stabbed in at random by the completely bonkers band Goblin on the soundtrack duty, is as terrifying as anything the rest of the film has to offer. The power of Suspiria is not in the script, but in the tone. It's trippy, bold, and brave, as all top quality horror should be. Number 1. Ring. If you only watched Gore Verbinski's very respectable remake in 2002, the original Japanese cursed videotape horror Ring, or Ringu in Japanese, is the film that started J-horror, and is the definitive solo horror viewing experience. Don't be put off by subtitles. Reading the dialogue can often draw the viewer into the plot more than just listening to it, and this is a film you'll want to concentrate on. The entire plot revolves around home viewing, specifically ghostly VHS tapes brought to life by a vengeful spirit, exactly what the viewer is doing. It's a very meta concept. This is art imitating life, and it's almost a shame to watch it on a digital format. Inserting the videotape felt as if one were conjuring Sadako herself. If you make it to the end of the film alone, well done. Ring is one of the scariest movies ever made, and the final sequence is an illustration of director Hideo Nakata's skill as a filmmaker. Just when we think the spell has been broken, Ryuji realizes he has changed nothing and is simply too late. The curse is still very much alive, and we have to watch as Sadako literally crawls out of the television towards us. If your eyes aren't popping out of your skull by this point, wait until the phone rings. And there we have it, folks, our list of the 10 most fear-inducing horror movies to watch alone. But please do let us know in the comments section which horror movie induces the most fear in you when you watch it alone. For me, The Conjuring is definitely up there.